Lady, Mrs. Imelda Marcos, to Moscow for the funeral rites of the late Soviet leader Konstantin Chernenko and the reception of the new Secretary General Mikhail Gorbachev. Mrs. Marcos departed from Manila, accompanied by Acting Foreign Minister Pacifico Castro and Ambassador to Washington Benjamin Romualdez, on board the regular Philippine Airlines Flight 656 to Dahran. President Marcos and other high-ranking officials of the government and the military were on hand at the Manila International Airport to bid farewell to Mrs. Marcos and her party. Mrs. Marcos noted that this would have been her 6th visit to the Soviet Union since the opening of diplomatic relations with that country, and the 3rd funeral services she would have attended at the Soviet capital, and this would include the burials of Brezhnev and Andropov over the past years. Her other visits to the Soviet Union have concretized the diplomatic relations between the two countries and have realized various agreements which have brought closer cooperation and understanding in various endeavors between the two peoples and government. At the Dahran airport, the lateness of the mission's arrival did not deter the Saudi authorities from rendering full honors to the First Lady, who was met at the airport by General Nasser Faraj, the base commander of the Royal Kingdom's Eastern region, and other high-ranking Saudi officials who received her with utmost respect and overwhelming hospitality, highlighted by the honor guards and the red carpet rolled in her honor, as instructed specifically by the royal family. Philippine embassy officials, led by Ambassador Mauyag Tamano, were also at the airport in Dahran for the welcome and the reception to the First Lady. Ambassador Tamano informed us that specific instructions were given by the Royal Highness to extend the most gracious and warm welcome to Mrs. Marcos and her party. A sumptuous buffet was prepared at the royal suite of the VIP building at the Dahran airport, prepared no less by Filipino chefs, all working at the Saudi capital. The Saudi preparations at the airport was truly appreciated, considering the 2-hour delay at Dahran due to inclement weather in Moscow. This event, brief though it may seem, served to manifest the close and warm ties of friendship that happily exists not only at the official governmental levels between the Philippines and Saudi Arabia, but more particularly between the Saudi royal family and the First Family of the Philippines. As scheduled, the special mission headed by the First Lady arrived in Moscow after 17 hours, and that included a 2-hour stopover at Dahran Airport. As a high-level mission with both ceremonial and substantive objectives, the Philippines' highest interests have been enhanced considerably by the accomplishment of that mission. Moscow Mayor Vladimir Promislov led the Soviet Foreign Ministry and other officials upon the arrival of Mrs. Marcos and her delegation at 8 o'clock in the morning on the 13th of March. Rowena Arrieta, the First Lady's piano scholar at the Moscow Conservatory of Music, was also at the airport with a bouquet of lovely winter flowers to welcome her patroness. Despite the many other VIP arrivals, the welcome and the accommodations extended to the First Lady and her party reaffirmed the USSR's respect for the Philippines and the First Lady. Mrs. Marcos, after a brief rest at the prestigious Moscow hotel, where she was billeted together with other heads of state and delegations, proceeded immediately to the Hall of Columns of the Trade Unions of Soviet Russia, where the body of the late Soviet leader Konstantin Chernenko lay in state until noontime's funeral rites for viewing by thousands of Soviet people and other delegations from all over the world. Chernenko has been described as an outstanding party leader, a statesman, a patriot and internationalist, a consistent champion of the triumph of the ideals of communism and peace. Chernenko devoted all his life to the cause of the Leninist Party and to the interests of the Soviet people. A large wreath of Filipino white Cattleya orchids was brought by Mrs. Marcos for the wreath-laying ceremonies at the Hall of Columns. It was the only white-flowered wreath amidst the red wreaths that carried the colors of the Philippines and which was brought to the hall, and this small detail focused attention on the concern and the care of the First Lady personally. This was later noted with enthused appreciation by the Soviet officials. Priority positioning of the Philippine delegation was again quite obvious during this brief floral offering at the Hall of Columns. The Philippine mission was positioned ahead of other important delegations in viewing the remains of the late Chernenko, and in a warm gesture of Philippine custom, Mrs. Marcos moved off from the formal line to offer sympathies to the grieving widow and family of the late leader at the Kremlin. The funeral rites and the procession for the late Soviet leader moved slowly from the Column Hall to the Red Square. Millions of Russians lined as early as 10 in the morning to view the passage of the body, and the uniformed, pristine and disciplined platoon of soldiers that march alongside the exposed body. The entire affair was timed to meet the noontime sounding of the clock at the Red Square for the lowering of the body of the late Soviet leader. Black-trimmed flags hang from the lampposts, portraits of the dead leader replace the regular displays at the store windows, and the police had already cordoned off the central part of Moscow, including the Hall of Columns where Chernenko's body lay in state until the funeral. All enterprises and organizations throughout the territory of the Soviet Union, with the exception of enterprises with a continuous production style and cycle, stopped work for 5 minutes throughout the territory of the Soviet Union at the precise noon hour when the body was lowered. A 3-minute salute sounded by hooters echoed at factories, plants, railways, sea and river ships. At the moment that the body is lowered to the grave, artillery salvos are fired all over the Moscow capitals, in Moscow itself, and in the other hero cities of the Union republics throughout the Soviet Union. In his acceptance speech earlier, Gorbachev praised Chernenko's service to the party and vowed to work towards arms accord with the West. Mrs. Marcos was again given a frontline position alongside with other heads of state and heads of government, including immediately to her left and to her right, the Federal Chancellor Helmut Kohl, U.S. Vice President George Bush, and during the 2-hour Red Square ceremony and the military parade. During the reception of the newly installed Soviet leader at St. George's Kremlin Palace, above all, the early audience given by the Secretary-General Gorbachev to the First Lady and her party underscores the important status of the Philippines in the overall Soviet diplomatic and strategic concerns. General Gorbachev, her affectionate brief dialogues with Premier Tikhonov, Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko, and Vice Premier Kuznetsov proved beyond doubt the continuing close relationship the Philippines and the USSR leadership possesses. At the reception at the Kremlin, the Philippines was given first-hand opportunity to assess its actual status on the basis of the following random and spontaneous meetings of the First Lady with other heads of governments, delegations, and important world leaders. It may be stated without exaggeration that the Philippines is a respected member of the family of nations, as gathered by Acting Minister Pacifico Castro from the following unsolicited comments indicative of fraternal concern and support for the Philippines. In Palace, protocol insisted that the First Lady and her party take precedence immediately after British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. After separately inquiring about the President's state of health, expressed her best wishes for him and the Filipino nation. President Zia-ul Haq and the Pakistani delegation made an effort to reach the First Lady at the Red Square to convey their best wishes for President Marcos and the Filipino people. Canadian Premier Brian Mulroney similarly made a determined effort to greet and have photographs taken with the First Lady. In wishing President Marcos and the Philippines best wishes, Prime Minister Mulroney informed the First Lady that Filipinos voted for him in Canada and that 11 Pinoys actually work in his staff. President Francois Mitterrand, after recalling the partnership with President Marcos in Cancun, expressed best wishes for both the President and the country. Moroccan Premier Lamrani expressed best wishes to President Marcos and the Philippines and underscored the close and important Philippine-Moroccan ties and promised to visit the Philippines soon. Austrian President Kirchlager likewise conveyed best wishes to President Marcos and to the Filipino people, stressing the importance of ties with the Philippines and his country. British Premier Margaret Thatcher enthusiastically greeted the First Lady and repeatedly inquired about Member of Parliament Amy Manotok and also conveyed her good wishes to the President. Federal German Republic Chancellor Helmut Kohl, after being assured of the President's health, the Philippines' political stability and economic recovery, sincerely wished the Philippines well. Spanish Premier Felipe Gonzalez cordially conveyed best wishes for the President and the Filipino people. Vice President George Bush and State Secretary Schultz individually and repeatedly expressed sincere wishes for the President and support for the Philippines. United Nations Secretary General Javier Perez-Ecuellar, aside from wishing President Marcos and the country well, also expressed profound regret for his failure to visit the Philippines during his recent Southeast Asian tour. The Palestinian Liberation Organization chief Yasser Arafat also sought the First Lady at Red Square for enthusiastic greetings and best wishes for President Marcos and the Filipino people. Swedish Prince Bertil also expressed best wishes for President Marcos. And other foreign ministers and envoys braved the freezing -5 temperature and the crowd to approach Mrs. Marcos and to wish her, President Marcos, and the Philippines well. In conclusion, the warm reception accorded the First Lady and her delegation, and the singular attention to precedence in the ceremonies, and most important in the granting of audience with the new Soviet leader, have projected before the international community the importance the Soviet Union attaches to its relations with the Philippines. The sending of the delegation has more than ever reaffirmed and enhanced the ties of friendship between these two countries. One of the first world leaders that was scheduled for private call on the new Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was our First Lady Imelda Marcos. On March 14th, the day after the funeral of Chernenko, Mrs. Marcos, accompanied by Acting Foreign Minister Pacifico Castro, Ambassador to Washington Benjamin Romualdez, and Chargé d'Affaires to Moscow Fernandez, met with Secretary General Gorbachev and the Kremlin leaders for 45 minutes. Mrs. Marcos expressed gratitude for the warm reception extended to her and members of her party from the moment of her arrival in Moscow. She reiterated the sympathies extended by President Marcos and the Filipino people over the death of Soviet leader Chernenko, while at the same time reaffirming our close relations with the Soviet Union through its new leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Mrs. Marcos' invitation to Gorbachev to visit the Philippines was warmly accepted, and arrangements for this historic event may well be underway to set the scheduled visit at the soonest convenience for the two leaders. Their talks revolved around a wide range of topics involving security, trade, and economic issues. Gorbachev expressed satisfaction that the relations between the Philippines and the USSR has progressed along policies of mutual cooperation, and since there are agreements along cultural and economic lines, the task of expanding and strengthening such economic and cultural ties should therefore be an easy task. He expressed the need to strengthen confidence between our two countries, which, as he expressly emphasized, should not be difficult given the present international situation. Both Gorbachev and Gromyko expressed appreciation for the First Lady's briefing on the internal, regional, and international situation surrounding the strategic location of the Philippines. Both Gorbachev and the First Lady exchanged a common view of their commitments, as envisioned likewise by President Marcos. Gorbachev's own relentless pursuit of a social policy in the name of man for the benefit of man, and President Marcos and the First Lady's commitment to the international human order, the international code of ethics, and the development of the nation centered on man. This is also reflected in the First Lady's vision of a city of man for Metro Manila and her programs for man with the Ministry of Human Settlements. Acting Foreign Minister Pacifico Castro summarized their talks with the Soviet leader as conducted in a most friendly atmosphere, characterized by frank and friendly exchanges of views between two nations holding identical views on the need to promote peace in the world. The new Soviet leader, as Minister Castro said, showed sympathetic understanding and expressed confidence that under the leadership of President Marcos, all our difficulties could be overcome. The mission of the First Lady, Imelda Marcos, to Moscow once again underlined the historic importance of our diplomatic initiatives as outlined by President Marcos, and the unique opportunity of dialogue and friendship with the new and dynamic leadership of the USSR as executed by the President's personal representative, Imelda Marcos. from Moscow, the capital of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, this is Rita Gadi Baltazar reporting.